Welcome, I am the Loud Little Ducky. We are back with another thing on Laura Owens. It seems like it never stops. She has just recently put out another self-published Medium article about her being diagnosed with autism. Let's take a look at it, and then we will look at autism a little bit as a breakdown and maybe compare some celebrities to behaviors, or if you even know somebody yourself that is on the spectrum. This is not meant to be disrespectful to people with autism, but we are here to question things and see what she has to say, because Owens has found new excuses for her bad behavior. Now, I was wanting to sit on this because when I first heard it and was listening to what this said, I was livid. I was pissed because this is another way for her just to be offensive and to like try to paint herself as a victim, but in fact she's not the victim, and she is now just putting a bad spin on autism, and that's not what autism is about. It is insane to me. And I was hospitalized a little bit, so I actually ended up sitting on this a little bit longer, so I may be able to not get so angry as I would have originally when going through this. But it starts with, I was just diagnosed with autism and it explains everything. Now, does it, Owens? And, she has 10 claps on this. Yay. So she starts up saying, growing up, I was the shy one in a family of big personalities. Both of my parents were talk show hosts, able to command every room they walked into, and my sister was the life of every party, always surrounded by people who adored her. And me? I stayed on the sidelines, painfully shy, terrified to speak up, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know how. I wanted so badly to feel comfortable in my own skin, to move through life with ease and confidence they seemed to have. I tried. God, did I try. I devoured every self-help book I could find, convinced that if I worked hard enough, I could fix the part of me that couldn't come out of my shell. You know what would have helped with this? Therapy. Go talk to a therapist. And also, why has nobody diagnosed this previous to now? You have neurological doctors, you have people, psychologists and everything else, and nobody has thought to test you up until now when you're trying to excuse your bad behavior. It's suspicious. She continues on by saying, I wanted so badly to be different. I spent my entire life trying to change. I forced myself into uncomfortable situations, hoping to become the person everyone expected me to be. I read every self-help book I could find, went to daily workout classes, started a podcast, even gave a TED Talk, thinking that maybe, just maybe, I could mold myself into someone confident. Someone outgoing, someone who felt home in their own skin, but no matter how hard I tried, I always felt like I was missing the rule book to life that everyone else had been given. It sounds like you don't have self-confidence, which I agree with that. I don't think she has any confidence. I think that's why she has some abandonment issues, and she does this to herself. She has it in her head that she needs to latch on to anybody and everybody. And maybe that's because she wasn't loved as much. Maybe her sister was the favorite. And she wasn't. It's hard to tell. But I deal with this. I deal with self-confidence issues. I don't have a lot of self-esteem. I try working on it with, getting closer to 40. I'm hoping, in my 40s, it can be a second chapter in life of self-confidence and things like that. And I'm working every day. But a self-help book is not going to be the answer. Talking to someone, a professional, will be the answer. She says, the truth is, I missed out on so much because of it. I canceled dinners with friends because the thought of social interaction, even though I desperately wanted to see them, drained me before I even left the house. Friends saw me as unreliable and relationships ended. I even missed my sister's bachelorette party despite being her maid of honor, because the idea of being on for an entire weekend, even though I would have been surrounded by people I loved, left me exhausted before it even started. Now, that's interesting because while all of this bachelorette parties and her sister's wedding and things like that was going on, she was claimed to be abused by Maraschini, because he was supposed to be her date to all of that, I believe. If it wasn't Maraschini, it was Gillespie. And she was being abused by that person. And so it's interesting that now the reason is because she has anxiety. And is not great with social interactions, which I don't believe for a second. She just does not. She doesn't have that. She says it wasn't just shyness or introversion. Certain sounds overwhelmed me, even if they weren't loud. They could even make me feel physically ill. Sudden changes threw me into a panic. The smallest shift in a routine could derail me, leaving me unable to function for hours, sometimes days. I thrived on routine and could eat the same meals for weeks or even months at a time. Well, we know you went to the same restaurants over and over again. But I deal with a child who has anxiety and has had it since he was a kid. And I tried to show him that not every surprise was bad. Not every disrupt in a routine was awful. He did not like it. He doesn't like surprises. He does not like unplanned things. We have taught him a lot of coping mechanisms for it. One of them is weather. Weather to a lot of people is very unpredictable and can be scary and heighten people with anxiety. Now he loves weather. He loves reading the radar because he has found a way to make it more predictable for him, and which is great. But if we say we're going to 3 stores and let's say Walmart didn't have what we needed, and so I needed to run into Target, which is now a 4th store, it would mess him up. He hated it. We didn't stick to the schedule. We said 3 stores. And I sprung a 4th one on him. But I was trying to teach him that you can't plan every single day. Sometimes things happen. This sounds like a little bit of anxiety. I don't see that for her because she does not stick to a schedule. She's up till all hours of the night. She doesn't do the same thing day in, day out. Like, I can see her being depressed and having some anxiety. That's what this is. This to me right here is not autism. But she says, over the years, I was diagnosed with depression, anxiety, ADHD, and PTSD. Each one explained a piece of the puzzle. But never the whole picture. Then after my life fell apart in ways I could never have imagined, I found out the truth. So I love how she's putting the puzzle word in there. because as a lot of us know, a big thing for autism is that little puzzle piece. It's a huge part of like the branding and different things to try to explain it. So yeah, she cleverly put in puzzle. So great wording. But now here she goes. She says, I have high functioning autism. Autism wasn't something I ever thought could describe me. I always assumed it meant struggling with emotions or missing social cues, things I never had trouble with. First of all, you have struggled with emotions and you miss a lot of things, like you don't understand anything. I don't know that you pick up on social cues. Actually, you know what? No, I think you pick up on the social cues. You just don't care. She says things I never had trouble with. I understand humor. I connect deeply with people. I've always felt everything. But what I didn't realize was how much I was working behind the scenes just to keep up. Autism for me wasn't about being disconnected. It was about how hard I was pushing myself to handle things others seemed to manage easily. And then she has a picture here, and it says, I wish I could tell the little girl on the left that her shyness and fear of change won't go away, but one day she will learn why. Getting diagnosed with autism will give her something more important than answers. It'll give her a reason to be kind to herself. She starts back with, then my life completely fell apart. After a year of celibacy, I found myself staring at a positive pregnancy test. It was 11 days after I hooked up with my then realtor, Clayton Echard, former star of The Bachelor. Suddenly, the structure and predictability that had kept me grounded disappeared. I was consumed by uncertainty and fear, and I froze. Is it celibacy if you didn't choose the celibacy life? Is it still considered celibacy? Because I guess I might be celibate. Not by choice. I just don't have time for any of it. So she goes, I went to urgent care to get the pregnancy confirmed and informed Clayton about the positive test results. I even provided him access to my patient portal. That patient portal. That's a trigger for me. So he could verify it himself. In response, he texted me a list of options, like it was a business transaction. I would like for you to get an abortion. If you do not, that's your choice. Either you'll take 100% custody of the child or it will be put up for adoption, he said. Then later, one of us will have 100% custody. There will be no joint custody. He ended the conversation by saying that he would talk to me when the time came to take a prenatal paternity test, would come weeks later. A couple of weeks later, he texted me to invite me to his apartment to talk, saying, I feel God is telling me we should meet up. I thought we might finally be able to make a decision together about the pregnancy, something we could navigate as adults. So it's interesting here that she said, after a year of celibacy, then she found herself staring at a pregnancy test. Is it because she chose not to be celibate anymore? Or is that because somebody took it from her? Because she has all these claims. So while she's writing this, she's leaving out a lot of things that don't explain certain things as well. She is just explaining things to fit the narrative that she wants to tell at this point in time. I hoped that maybe the pressure wouldn't be solely on me anymore, that we could do what was best for all involved. But when I arrived, instead of a conversation, he handed me a pregnancy test and bought and asked me to take it in front of him. I did, and it came back positive. Yes, and you sound so shocked and offended that he did this. But then you state that you actually brought one to take in front of him anyways, in case he wanted you to see it. So either way, you were prepared to take a pregnancy test in front of him or planned for it. So I am so tired of her acting shocked and offended that he would ask to see it in person. It's enough. In Clayton's deposition, Clayton admitted to buying the test, but later tried to dismiss the results by saying, "Let's call it an HCG test because we know she was never pregnant." Well, a lot of us feel that way, Owens. When asked directly if the box indicated that it was a pregnancy test, he replied, "Sure, I guess that's what they market it as for people who are actually truthful and taking the test and don't lie." He doubled down in a recent interview with Reality Steve, saying, "It's known as a pregnancy test for most people, but not her." Exactly, because it can't be a pregnancy test if you were never pregnant. It could be an HCG test, but not a pregnancy test. What he is stating is true. She says the day after seeing the test results with his own eyes, Clayton finally seemed to accept reality. He texted me, "I wanted you to come over to confirm what I was doubting, so I don't see you as a liar anymore." For a brief moment, I thought we were finally on the same page, and maybe there was a way forward. He even said, "I'm going to try and give us a chance this week. I'm going to keep an open mind, and maybe this weekend we can meet back up and see if it's a possibility to be intimate." I don't remember that in any of the texts that I've seen. I do not remember Clayton ever saying to her, "We can be intimate again." Like, maybe the meeting up, but I don't even know if I remember that. Maybe she's mixing up victims here. But I don't remember Clayton ever saying he was willing to be intimate with her ever again, if at all. If somebody knows where that is, please point me to it because I don't remember it. I had to stop recording when I was reading this part because I am like going back and I was trying to find stuff where it said that, but I cannot find anything. But says, "I'm really trying to have you feel seen and heard, so I want to give you a chance your way. At least at the end of it, I'll know I tried everything I could." I don't remember him saying this. I don't know where the text of this is. I would like to see it. And why has it never been brought up before? It wasn't brought up in court when he was saying, talking about the little dating contract thing. It wasn't in the, "Okay, I agree that you had a positive test pop up in front of my face and that you might be pregnant. Who's to say it's by me? Because we didn't have intercourse." But I do not remember this line of stuff. I feel like I would. I could be wrong, though. She says, "For the first time, it felt like I might be getting the clarity I so desperately needed. But within hours, everything changed again. He told me he had prayed about it and received an answer that we were not meant to be together in any capacity. Then he added, 'God has spoken to me. That is your body and your choice. Therefore, I am not going to ask you to get an abortion. However, that is my preference personally.' Given his sudden change of heart, I thought maybe he was overwhelmed, uncertain, or just needed time to process everything. In my mind, if he had been open to getting to know each other once, if he was willing to see if we could figure out how to be parents together or at least co-parent peacefully, there was a chance he might reconsider. So over the next few months, I tried to reopen the conversation, hoping we could find common ground. Okay, what does this have to do with explaining that you now have autism? You're just regurgitating your story, but put in there, I have autism. So it explains this. Like, this has nothing to do with your autism diagnosis, supposedly, that you have. Months later, Clayton leaked those private conversations to the public, and the newly formed Justice for Clayton group latched on what they sensationalized as a dating contract. What was it if it wasn't a dating contract? And I believe Clayton called it that, and I believe Greg Woodnick called it that. It wasn't Justice for Clayton that came up with that. You sent conditions that you wanted him to follow in order for you to get rid of the pregnancy. What else do you want to call that? An ultimatum? It seemed like a dating contract. Agree to date me or else. And here are all the things that need to happen. They distorted my genuine efforts to find a way forward, twisting it into a narrative that I was trying to extort him into a relationship. Yeah, that's what we see it as. It's not, we're not twisting the narrative. That's what it was. We can go on the street and show people this and ask them, what do you think this is? And everybody's answer is going to be that. We don't even have to tell them the story. We just have to say, what would you call this? Now, some might be like, this is BS. This is get the heck out of there. A lot of things. But this is not twisting anything. Like, we could go ask 100 strangers on the street who have no idea about this story, and we'd all get the same answer. And it's not your version of events, Owens. She says, in reality, all I wanted was to explore every option, from trying to parent together to finding ways to co-parent respectfully before we were left with only the hardest choices. That relationship contract had nothing to do with co-parenting. Parenting together respectfully, like, you can parent together and co-parent respectfully without having to date the person. In an effort to get Clayton involved in the decision-making process, I invited him and his family to 5 different OBGYN appointments. I hope that hearing directly from the doctor might make the situation more real for him, might push him to finally engage with the pregnancy. Maybe, just maybe, he'd step up. I think he would have gone to one of those appointments, but you also told them you don't want him there. You also said on the stand that you went anonymously to Planned Parenthood so that he couldn't figure out where you went. He couldn't talk to a doctor to verify these things. So, no, you didn't want him to talk to one so that hopefully he would step up, because if that was the case, you would have let him know where you were going to be. You would have had all this, but you didn't do that. And now she's going to get into why she didn't do those things, because it's not because she was scared of him. It's not because she didn't want him to not talk to a doctor. She says, but each time they showed no interest, and I couldn't bring myself to face it alone. Your mother would have gone with you. I believe you said she drove with you to the Planned Parenthood. Didn't you say that on the stand? I canceled all the appointments, suffocated by the thought of sitting there by myself, overwhelmed by the uncertainty and the pressure. Maybe part of me wasn't ready to face it either. Well, what was your reason in all the other cases? Was it the same with Gillespie? It wasn't the same for Maraschini because you supposedly went and did that thing. and you did it by yourself, you could face doing that alone, going to get an abortion, so you say, by yourself without Marashini there, but you couldn't go to your OBGYN to find out if you were pregnant or not by yourself as a grown adult. Like, I could understand if you were a teenager and you wanted somebody there, but you weren't alone. You had your mom and your dad. Your mother, who is complacent in all of this, definitely would have been right by your side. Because y'all are two peas in a pod. You were never alone in all this. And they would have gone to see the proof with their own eyes. Because once again, even if you were pregnant, doesn't mean that it was Clayton's. You say you were celibate. You say you hadn't had sex in a long time. But there's a lot of things that you say that end up not being true. So we can't take that at face value. So when it became clear that trying to work things out directly with Clayton wasn't going anywhere, I decided to take a more structured approach. I paid a lawyer $5,000 to step in as a middleman, hoping that with professional guidance, we could come up with a clear parenting plan. Something that would provide structure and remove the constant uncertainty. But even with legal help, we made no progress. The retainer ran out in a week, and I was right back to where I started again. Well, how did you not make any progress legally? That makes no sense to me, that you couldn't come up with a parenting plan. Like, the fact that this case lingered on for so long, and it was because of her antics, because it wouldn't have gone this long if she would have just proved at one point during all this that she was pregnant. And she couldn't do it. She continued to lie. That is why she has been referred for prosecution. She said, I decided that the next logical step was to file a paternity case. I thought it would force him to come up with his idea of a schedule, see that the court encouraged joint custody so kids could have both parents in their lives, even if the relationship between those parents didn't work out, and compel him to take a prenatal paternity test. Arizona allows you to file while pregnant, and you don't even need proof, but I had it. It seemed like a no-brainer to file. You didn't have proof. You had an HCG test. That's it. You still haven't shown your proof, so that's a lie. And maybe Arizona needs to change the fact of filing prior to having the baby there. I mean, it stinks because, yeah, you would like all that stuff to be in place, and you would like, the doctor's visits to be jointly paid for and things like that. But either way, she says, after filing, I paid $725 for a paternity test at a lab Clayton had chosen, fully expecting him to schedule his portion. But he didn't. He ignored calls and emails from the lab to pick a date, and I was forced to get a refund. Another attempt at getting answers met with silence. You canceled his testing. I didn't want to go to the media to pressure Clayton to take accountability, but it felt like my only option at that point. I wasn't seeking attention or fame, far from it. You know what somebody with autism probably doesn't want to do? Is have all eyes on them. Now, there are, like I said, celebrities that are autistic and on that, and we're gonna talk about those celebrities and see kind of how they live their life, as compare it to kind of how she does. I know that every person is different. That's why we have a bunch of different ones on different scales of the spectrum to look at. But usually people that are not confident, have anxiety, are bad with socializing and things like that, don't want the spotlight on them. but you put the spotlight on yourself. It doesn't track. I am not a healthcare professional or a psychologist or a psychiatrist or any of that. I'm just speaking from my own life experience and knowing people that have it on a high spectrum, like who are non-functional, and the ones that have it but can function still. So it wasn't your only option. Like, you didn't have to put this in the public at all. You wanted to because you purposely wanted revenge because he didn't choose you. And it bit you in the butt. She said, I even asked to remain anonymous. And I wasn't after Clayton's money. He was my realtor. And even if he'd followed through with submitting 2 different offers he claimed to have made on my behalf, he would have earned his commission. But that's another story. I thought public pressure would compel him to take a DNA test and finally engage in a conversation about a custody plan. Well, the courts can do that. You didn't need the media. Because guess what? All of us everyday folks, we don't have the media to pressure baby daddies into taking paternity tests or go to court. We don't have that. We have the courts to compel them. We have law enforcement. That's all that needed to be involved in this. But law enforcement doesn't ever seem to side with you. So I can see why you're not okay with that. She says, the situation was spiraling out of control and I needed answers from him. No, you just were impatient and wanted this before the end of the first trimester. When the news hit the press, Clayton denied that our one-night stand resulted in a pregnancy. And millions believed him. Why wouldn't they? He was the Bachelor, the charming man who handed out roses. First of all, I didn't watch his season of The Bachelor. I still haven't. Now it's a one-night stand. A one-night stand is usually consensual. So now he didn't ARP you. Your story is inconsistent. This is why nobody believes you. Because even from medium article to medium article, you can't keep your story straight. This is why lawyers tell you to zip your lips. Don't say anything. Because everything can be used against you. And you're making things worse for yourself if you do get prosecuted. Because you haven't let up. Nobody cares that Clayton handed out roses. Like, there are plenty of celebrities that have done bad things, and guess what? We don't side with them. Look at what P. Diddy is in the news for. We're not like, oh, P. Diddy, we love his music. He's a celebrity, so, he couldn't have done those things. No, we're appalled, and we're not on his side if he did these things. Just like if Clayton would have done what you're saying he has done, we would not be on his side. But we thought this was going to be really easy for you to prove that he was doing what you say he was doing, and it just never happened. So who else are we to believe? The person with no proof and their lies don't match the story and the evidence, or the person whose story has been the same and everything that they have said has proven to be true by your lack of evidence? And that Bachelor denied that our one-night stand resulted in pregnancies. And millions believed, why wouldn't they? He was the Bachelor. He handed out roses on TV. Someone thought they knew and could trust. Meanwhile, I was painted as manipulative, attention-seeking liar. They didn't know me. We didn't know either one of you. I didn't know who Clayton was. They said he was the Bachelor. No idea that he was. We had no clue. So we didn't know either one of you. Y'all both started on equal playing fields for many of us. Now, Dave Neal knew who he was. And reality, Steve knew who he was. They followed that. And some did know about that. But most of us didn't. You started the same. And that's the purpose of court and trials and things. You lay out the story, you show us the evidence, and then we pick the side that is true, that the story aligns and the evidence aligns with. And it just wasn't you. I'm sorry you don't like that, but that is on you because you brought something that you couldn't prove. And that shows that you lied. Because proving you're pregnant is the easiest thing in the world to do. She says, the irony, the Daily Beast once called Clayton the biggest F-boy in Bachelor history. Which is interesting because who listens to the Daily Beast? Because when I think to the biggest F-boy, I think of Nick Viall. I did watch his season. He was the biggest F-boy to me in them. She says, yet no one seemed to question his version of events. Yes, we did. Like, why is she saying this? Like, everybody's questioning. We have told your side of the story. But you still have not given us anything. You still haven't given us the Los Angeles stuff. You could have put that in one of your Medium articles. But you haven't. This was the same man who on the Viall files admitted that when I came over that night, we took our clothes off almost immediately and didn't put them back on until the next morning. Okay, yeah, he said that. He even talked openly about finishing twice that night. He's never denied that we hooked up or that I came over to take a pregnancy test in front of him. He confirmed all of that. You're right, he did. Because all that stuff can be true and him still not get you pregnant. She says, after I miscarried, I tried to drop the case. Clayton had no legal fees, but Clayton hired an attorney, Greg Woodnick, who allegedly took on the case pro bono as part of a personal vendetta against me. He had represented my ex in a civil case I filed 2 years ago and objected to the case being dismissed. Judge Julianne Mata of the Maricopa County Superior Court agreed, and the case dragged on for 8 horrendous months. It wouldn't have dragged on if you would have proven at any of that time period that you were pregnant, if you had signed the HIPAA form for the correct place, that you say supposedly can verify that you were there and that you had an ultrasound and they confirmed that you were pregnant with twins. But you couldn't even do that. You still have not done that. But everybody needs to believe what you're saying, right? And once again, what does this have to do with you being autistic? Nothing. None of it. You put that in as clickbait is what you did. She's in the courtroom. Judge Julianne Mata sat there seemingly enchanted by Clayton's fame. Whatever. Whatever. It was like she couldn't see past the glitter of his role as the Bachelor. Her father sat in the overflow room with the Justice for Clayton supporters. He didn't seek out sitting for the Clayton supporters. He just sat somewhere. You act like he had a sign and a t-shirt and he made sure he sat with them because that was the correct side. Like this is choosing a bride and groom side at a wedding. And so he was going to go sit on the groom side. Because he was for the groom, not for the bride. Like that is not how any of this happened. He allegedly called the case a circus, a shit show, while they laughed and fed off the spectacle. You're getting a bunch of hearsay, but keep feeding it. That's what you do best. It was like being on trial for something I couldn't even define, being myself. Her sister followed Clayton on Instagram. How could I stand a chance? Her sister, Judge Mata's sister, followed Clayton on Instagram? When did that happen, and where's the proof of that? Because that's a new one. Not even her lawyer brought that up. In her ruling, Judge Mata wrote that no reasonable person would cancel appointments during a high-risk pregnancy. But what's reasonable when you're autistic? Are you effing kidding me right now? Autistic people can be reasonable, especially when they have support at home. Because your mother could have taken you to these things. Your mother is supposed to help you be more reasonable. Your father is supposed to help you be more reasonable and function if you are autistic. So don't give me this bullcrap. When you're too afraid to face the situation on your own that you can't even walk into your doctor's office, you're not facing it alone. Like, I told my daughter this when she was pregnant, in talking about all her options and everything. You know, making sure that if baby daddy didn't stick around, she wasn't alone in this. I was here to support her and guide her. You know, I'm not going to raise the baby, but I will be here to hold your hand. I will be your Lamaze partner if you need to be. I will be your labor partner. I always tell her, it's me and you till the end. She was not alone, and neither was Owens, because her mom would have been all up in all that. It's ridiculous, and it's a lie. She didn't see me struggling to survive. She saw someone who didn't fit the narrow mold of what a reasonable woman should look like. And that was enough for her to say I wasn't credible. No, we didn't look at you and say, oh, nope, she looks like she's uncredible, and then this guy's the Bachelor. Like, if anything, somebody that has a public, you know, they're known to the public, they actually have more reason to lie and make the narrative fit. Deny. And then stuff comes because they need to save face in the media. Whereas somebody that is basically a nobody, like everyday people like myself and stuff, what reason do they have to lie? You know, because we don't have to save face. We're not in the public, and if we have the truth, it doesn't matter that that person in the public eye is going to look bad. Or if you're a liar, like the woman who tried to say she had Justin Bieber's kid. Well, a bunch of people were like, okay, let's believe this woman. And then it comes out that it was a lie. Like, nobody, I mean, some people thought, oh, maybe she's using him for fame. But, you know, it's really easy to prove if that's Justin Bieber's kid or not with the paternity test. And it, you know, Justin Bieber could deny it all he wanted to if, you know, because it was the truth, or to try to save face, like this woman is crazy, you know, because famous people have that. But that wasn't your case here, Owens. Like, I hate when people do that. Oh, that because he was famous, everybody loved him. Nobody looked at you and said that. We looked at all the evidence as a whole and decided you could not prove that you were ever pregnant. That's why you were not credible. You lied and manipulated things. That's why you weren't credible. Not because you didn't look like somebody or you didn't fit this narrow mold or anything. That is not what we have here. That's what you put in your head, but that's not reality. She claimed that the petition was not filed in good faith. The petition was not grounded in the fact or based on law. The petition was filed for improper purpose, such as to harass the other party, to cause unnecessary delay, or to increase the cost of litigation to the other party. Yeah, you wanted him to pay. You wanted him to pay publicly for saying he didn't want to be with you. How dare any man tell you no? Because when they do, they get the wrath of you and your parents. I tried to drop the case after I miscarried, when Clayton had no legal fees, and she refused to let me know. She even went so far as to state that I knowingly presented a false claim, despite having not only a positive HCG test, but you also doctored one of those. Not that you submitted to the court, but you did doctor one of those. And you doctored an ultrasound. So forgive her for not believing you. But I also had the opinion of an OBGYN expert who testified with 99.9% certainty I was pregnant. Or that you could have been pregnant with an HCG test being positive. But you know what would have been even better is not an expert witness, but just your OB. Just somebody that saw you while you were pregnant. That would have been enough. You didn't need to pay an expert. All you had to bring was somebody that saw you when you were pregnant. Heck, even a telehealth doctor, if you had a video call, if they saw it. But we also know you had that moon bump at one point, so maybe we wouldn't believe that. But, maybe the Planned Parenthood people, they could have said something, but you never handed over any of that. You had to hire somebody that did not know you when you were pregnant, or when you said you were pregnant. And also, you say that you tried to drop this case once you found out you weren't pregnant anymore. When was that last fetal DNA test that you took? Did you take it after you found out you weren't pregnant anymore? And that's why there was little to no fetal DNA? Or right before you found out? When was the last little to no fetal DNA test taken in your timeline? Because I think that's very questionable. She says, as if that wasn't enough, she wrote that there was what appears to be a case of serial fabrications here and elsewhere by petitioner. What serial fabrications? The case against Eckerd was the only paternity case I ever filed in my life. There was no pattern of similar, if not identical, behavior. How could she claim I had a history of this when there's absolutely no basis for it? Ma'am, just because you didn't file a paternity case does not mean that you did not fabricate lies and take out restraining orders on men that did not want to be with you. That you told them that you were pregnant with twins with. That's where it is. Just because you didn't file the same kind of court case, you still had the same behaviors. No basis for it. Judge Mata ignored the science, ignored the medical records, ignored the HCG positive blood and urine test, all proving I was pregnant. What medical records? The medical record, a Banner patient portal that said you took an HCG test. That's all there was in this case. I had that after a hysterectomy. That doesn't prove that I was pregnant. It did not prove anything. Give us the ultrasound and the stuff from a visit where you confirmed the twins. Where are those medical records? Where is that ultrasound from Planned Parenthood? And Planned Parenthood saying, yes, we did see her on this date. You still write these Medium articles without giving out that proof because you think that you are owed some sort of privacy and don't need all your medical stuff out here. But when you're trying to get people to believe your story, you can write it a million different ways. But until you come out with proof that you supposedly have that would put all of this to rest and prove Clayton a liar and you to be the truth teller, you will not put out. And if I had something that absolutely 100% proved that I was telling the truth, whether I thought I shouldn't have to put this out there or not, I would. I come with receipts because you better be able to back up what you say. If not, I'm not going to believe you. She says she didn't care about the facts. What she cared about was how I acted, how I fidgeted, how my voice trembled, how I fell apart under the weight of it all. When did anybody talk about how you fidgeted? When did you fidget? Your voice trembles? Yeah. You also have the weird facial expressions, and you fall apart when somebody disagrees with you. Because how could they ever question you? Like, you're supposed to be believed. I'm a woman. Believe me. You just believe what I say. What do you mean I have to prove it? It's because of women like you is why people have to prove it. And you give women a bad name. She says, and for that, she referred me to the county attorney and awarded a $149,000 judgment to Clayton for his legal fees, which had allegedly occurred over the 8 months after I tried to dismiss the case. My attorney, David Gingras, and I are appealing the ruling, but if it isn't overturned, have I unknowingly opened the door to something far more dangerous, where a woman's right to file a paternity case was used against her? 30% of women who file the cases are wrong about who the father is, and many miscarry. Okay. Have those 30% proved that they were pregnant? Or was it just a delusion in their head? A want. And you got caught on your lie. Did those women go to an OBGY doctor? Did they have ultrasound? Did they have confirmation from doctors that had seen these people? Nobody's saying you had to be right about who the father was. Nobody's saying that if you miscarried, that's not okay. We're saying we want you to prove you're pregnant. And if you were, okay. But we still have not seen that yet, and you just don't get it. If my case stands, it means that women, even with proof, could face financial devastation just for filing. It means a man could ruin her both financially and legally. It means the simple act of seeking the truth could become too dangerous, too risky. Oh, here she is trying to be Amber Heard. It sets a bad precedent. No, it doesn't. Sorry about the fire trucks going by. That is not what I wanted. But it doesn't set a bad precedent because you should have to prove that you're pregnant. She says, in all of this because a judge dazzled by Clayton's fame couldn't understand my autism. She couldn't see that my actions shaped by a development disorder weren't about deception. They were about fear, about navigating uncertainty, the only way I knew how. By withdrawing, by not going to appointments, by being mentally paralyzed. No, that's not what happened here. Nobody was dazzled by Clayton's fame. He wasn't that famous. But the science that I proved I was pregnant didn't matter. The only thing that did was how I behaved. No, you could have behaved the way you did and had proof of an ultrasound and a doctor verifying that they did that ultrasound, but you didn't have that. Now a nurse verifying nothing, you didn't have any of it. Whatever world you are living in, you need to step out of. Warning, do not come into contact with Laura Owens. And it's got pictures of her. Warn friends and families to not engage. It's got the Reddit thread, justiceforclayton.com. It says, last month, the Justice for Clayton group sent this flyer to my gym, the one place where I'd spent years and over 1,500 classes trying to feel normal. After skipping several days, terrified of walking back in, I finally found the courage to return. Just stepping through those doors again was the bravest thing I've done all year. If you say so. And the flyer says, Laura Owens faked multiple pregnancies in order to trap men into dating her. Falsely accused men of ARPing, assault, abuse, and coercion. In multiple lawsuits trying to scam men out of millions of dollars. Filed multiple false police reports and claims in order to win legal cases. May be wearing fake pregnancy bump in public. Laura is a resident of Scottsdale, Arizona. She is currently 33 to 34 years old and has recently been seen on dating apps such as Bumble. Brown hair, brown eyes, under 5'5", small build, and less wearing the fake pregnancy bump. Edits photos and will catfish, may be going by the name Emily Wilson. Did your gym do anything with this? Should people be sending this? No. No. I mean, it's out there in the public. If people want to do their research on who they're dating, they will find it. So she says, the Justice for Clayton cult members and the grifty content creators who have created thousands of hours of content about my life, who turned a simple paternity case into a cruel, merciless witch hunt for the last year. I leave you with this. This was a simple paternity case. You are the one that turned it into something that it shouldn't have been, with all your lies and your doctoring of evidence. You did that, not us. But you can't take accountability for anything. She says, you have given 3 men I have an active restraining orders against, granted by 3 judges in 2 states, a platform to rewrite history. No, we've just given facts out there. We have shown all the court documents that we have for all those cases, the text messages that are between y'all, the story you put out there, and we have come to our own conclusions, and so have others. We can view them as victims. Nobody's saying they weren't maybe mean to you at some point. And some of the things maybe they shouldn't have said. But you have lied and doctored evidence. So even if you were telling the truth about anything, because you've lied about other things, nobody can believe you. She says, thanks to you and Judge Mata, they've gone from abusers to victims. In your eyes, even though a court hasn't modified a single one of their orders, you even cheered for Maraschini when he gave a 2.5-hour interview with one of the Justice for Clayton content creators, claiming it was his first time telling his story. First time telling his story to the public. And where everybody has looked at this. We know that nothing he has sent has been doctored because he's had a forensic expert look at that and say, no, this stuff was sent by the person it said it was sent by. He did not doctor these images. He did not make these images or anything like that. He was given credibility. A judge didn't give him the time of day. He also did not fight you on the first time you got the restraining order against him. He just thought he could let you have it and you would go away. He did not expect to still be dealing with you and your nonsense for years to come when he has moved on with his life. You can't move on in yours. It says, he's told it to a judge twice, and case files is over 200 pages long. But you know what? It is also not hard to get a restraining order. A lot of people will give them just so they can say, you know what? We gave the protection order so that it can't be on their hands. If something happens to them and they're like, well, they asked for a restraining order so many times and the judges never gave it to him. They do it out of precaution. It's not hard, especially when you're like, oh, I'm a woman and I'm so little and helpless. And look, they're so big and strong and they could just hurt me. You give women a bad name. And I cannot, as a woman, stand people who do that. You make us look stupid. We are not defenseless little creatures. Even if we are small and petite. We are strong, we are mighty, and we are smart. And you are trying to twist that to your advantage because you are alone and nobody wants to be with you. You are the common denominator. Maybe sit back and wonder why none of these men want to be with you. Take some time to do some self-reflecting. She says, you turned my suffering into your entertainment. I'm not here for entertainment. I'm here because people need to know that this is uncalled for and nobody should stand for this. That I do not stand behind a believe all women world blindly. I don't believe that we need to have more power than men. I believe everything should be equal. No one is greater than anyone else. That's the world that I want to live in. And all we've done is put out your documents and their documents, yours and their text messages, and we let people decide. You are the one who has made a spectacle of this and who has turned this whole thing by your actions. But it's everybody else's fault. She says, you made a spectacle of my suffering, turned it into memes, followed my every move like I was something to be hunted. You didn't just stop at me. You dragged my family into it, even contacting my sister's workplace multiple times to tell them about Justice for Clayton. You followed my 78-year-old father's ex-girlfriend on social media. You made death threats against my mother. Now, if people are making those types of threats and doing those types of things, they do not need to be doing that. And I guarantee you, all these people that you're sitting here, the cult and content creators, None of us content creators have done any of this because that is not what we stand for. We also tell people that listen or follow us, do not interact in this kind of behavior. Now, are there some crazy people that take things real world? Yes. And they shouldn't, and we are with you, and we can stand behind you about those things that are horrible. Nobody needs to call her sister's workplace. 70-year-old father's ex-girlfriend on social media? What? Like, how old is this ex-girlfriend? Because he's been married to Laura's mom forever. So it was like a girlfriend of her dad in high school or something? Props to her for being on social media, too. You don't catch many people of that age on social media. Don't make death threats. Don't do any of that. You can dislike her mother. You can think that her mother is complacent and I think she's very much involved in this, if she's not somewhat of the puppet master behind some of this stuff. I think she is in Laura's ear about all of this. Writing on a Facebook, everyone shoot that see you next Tuesday, and posted what you believe to be her home address. Yeah, that's not okay either. You even called Adult Protective Services, falsely accusing me of abusing my own father. That shouldn't have been done. Do we think that you may have made him make that video? Yeah. And he just went along with it? I don't think we need to call Adult Protective Services over that, but okay. Falsely accusing me of abusing my father, you sent prank welfare checks, not out of concern, but just so you could later obtain the body cam footage and harass me with it on Reddit and YouTube. So content creators could make videos and profit off of my misery. No. When somebody is sitting here writing on their lawyer's blog and their own writing stuff and making police phone calls and putting in things to the FBI, where the FBI even did their own wellness check, you cannot say that people did not do it out of concern. Because while we do not like you as a person and you need to come clean about things, nobody actually wants you to be hurt. We want you to get help. She says you paid to manipulate search results so that when people looked up my name, they'd be sent to Justice for Clayton. Where's your proof in that? You stalked my clients. What clients do you have? Warned my gym about me, my competitors, people who had nothing to do with any of this. You've called me a waste of skin and bones. She said that in the FBI wellness check. Okay, that's a mean thing. Like, people say you're a waste of space, you're a waste of air. Like, okay, it's not a nice thing to say. She said you didn't stop to think about the human cost of what you were doing. Those people may not have. But the people you are projecting this to have not done this stuff. She says you understood that if a lie is repeated enough times, it starts to sound like the truth. That's how you buried the facts, by constantly pushing the same false narrative until people believed it. Where were we stating untruthful things? When we pull up court documents and read them, How is that pushing lies? When we pull up police body cam footage, how is that saying something enough times for it to be true? It is what it is. People can see and hear with their eyes and ears. Like, we don't have to spin it. It's right there in black and white. We're not spinning a narrative. That's you and your Medium articles. She says, and Eckert has encouraged you to ignore the protection order I had against him, which clearly stated defendant shall not communicate or post untrue or harassing comments regarding the plaintiff online. Well, you know what? They're not untrue or harassing comments, because now Eckert even has a judge that says what he is saying is true. His story is true. That is what the judgment said. So therefore, it is not posting untrue things. He is not posting harassment stuff. He has not told anybody to go after you. He wants people to nothing you. It says, and shall not cause others to communicate or post untrue or harassing comments. Well, Eckert hasn't done that. We have done this on our own. Like, I know it's amazing. Like, we have minds of our own, and we can decide to do things or not do things. We don't have to be told to do something or not to do something. We can just determine that stuff on our own. I know, a brain. She says, you cheered as he appeared on the Charlie Kirk show, where both he and Kirk stated that I needed to be prosecuted. Well, the judge agreed with that. So, yeah. If you're doing the things that you were caught doing, doctoring evidence, yeah, you should be prosecuted for that, for trying to lie. Just like all these other women who are trying to accuse sports figures of doing things to them that they didn't do, and it's on video. You should be prosecuted. I think Heard should be prosecuted for the things that she did. She says, on a different show, he openly admitted the community of people that keeps uncovering and supporting me is tracking her every movement, giving you the green light to dig deeper, to tear apart every piece of my life. No, it just says that people are doing that. Like, he doesn't need to do that because other people are just doing it. That doesn't say anything. In yet another interview, he brazenly said about the protective order I have against him. He said, I got to the point where I was like, you know what? Actually, I'm going to test this. I dare. If police show up and try to put me in cuffs for her, this is going to be a bigger stink than you realize. I'm going to fight this tooth and nail and say this is based on lies. Yeah. Because he's allowed to speak his truth. He's allowed to say truthful things. Just because you don't think they are doesn't mean that they're not true. Then he added, so I kind of got to the point where I'm like, no, wait, this is all based in a lie. So this protective order to me doesn't even exist. I don't really consider it valid whatsoever. And what he's saying there, which you're like, oh no, he's going to come and do things to me because he doesn't even think this is real. No, what he is saying is that him speaking out and speaking the truth, he's not doing anything wrong. So they can try to come at him for, telling the truth. But truth is an absolute defense. You can't defame somebody when things are truthful. You can't violate things because you're not lying. Now you are lying and harassing. So maybe you're breaking your order against harassment. She says, I am 5'5" and weigh 85 pounds now. Girl, eat something. That is unhealthy. Even a 5-foot person should not weigh 85 pounds. No adult person should weigh 85 pounds. No adult should weigh less than 100 pounds, in my opinion. But that's me. That's 48 pounds gone since I learned I miscarried last November. I barely recognize myself anymore. My skin is pale, my eyes are sunken, and I look like I've aged 2 decades in a single year. Something you've cruelly pointed out on social media. Maybe we're not doing it to be cruel. Maybe it's because we're worried. Because that is not healthy. And you do this to yourself by staying and looking at these websites and going on Reddit and watching videos. You have immersed yourself in this. And you are not doing yourself any favors. And as much as it hurts to admit you're right, I see it too. I see a woman whose body has been ravaged by relentless stress and fear. A woman stripped down to almost nothing. I see someone who has been pushed to her breaking point because of you. No, it is because of yourself. That you can't stand the fact that the truth about you is out there. You were getting away with it, and now your whole world has blown up. And your lies have caught up to you. Karma is a bitch. She says, because of the parasocial obsession this case has fueled, because of the cult-like behavior that has surrounded it. I'm not here to ask for your approval. Good, because you're not getting any of our approval. And I don't need your sympathy. Okay, great. Like, we still can be empathetic and sympathetic and caring people and still not like the actions that you have done. But if there's one thing I hope you take away from this, is that you never knew me. We don't have to know you to judge the actions. You did a thing or you didn't do a thing. You can be the most wonderful person. You can be the bestest friend anybody ever had, the bestest son, bestest daughter. You can be all the best in every aspect of life. But go kill a stranger. Not saying she's done any of that. But those people that knew a person that did that, we don't have to know you to know that what you did was not okay. Whether we knew you or didn't know you, it's not acceptable. Even if I did know you, and you were my sister, my daughter, my aunt, anybody, I would still feel the same way. She says, my reactions, freezing, withdrawing, hesitating, weren't signs of deception or manipulation. They were shaped by a developmental disorder I didn't even know I had. So how did you expect Judge Mata to know that you had these things? And there is a doctor that is on YouTube who likes to say, we do the best with the information that we had at the time. So nobody, when we were going through this, could say anything about you possibly being autistic or anything because we didn't have that information at the time. You're giving us this information now. Now we can look at it and examine it and see what we think. I, for one, don't buy it. You are on a low scale if you do have it. Like barely a blip, like you might have just accidentally answered a question wrong or misunderstood it. and that 1 point or 0.1 of a point got you there. But also, are you self-diagnosed? Are you Google diagnosed? Like, where did this come from? Are you going to do a TED Talk on it? Lord, hope not. I wasn't trying to get something in return for having an abortion, and I wasn't trying to extort anyone. Okay, that's not what those emails say. And it's funny that you always went off crazy when your lawyers were out of town or something. All I wanted was clarity, a plan, some kind of path forward where everyone involved could feel at peace. Well, doing those things and giving people ultimatum doesn't give anybody any peace. And you've done it to multiple men. Like, you have got to know by now that that is not going to work. So I hope if you ever have a relationship in the future, you do not give them ultimatums. But instead of trying to understand that, you judged me, tore apart my every move, and decided you had me all figured out. No, we just judged your actions, which we saw. And we have the right to do that. We have the right to have an opinion. She says you saw hesitation and labeled it manipulation. Where was your hesitation? I didn't see you hesitate to do anything other than hand over actual evidence that shows that you were pregnant. Where your hesitation is letting everybody see this Los Angeles Planned Parenthood evidence that you supposedly have. She says you saw fear and called it dishonesty, but you never once considered that maybe I was doing the best I could in a mind that was overwhelmed by the weight of a decision that felt impossible. I wasn't playing games, I was surviving. I wasn't calculating, I was struggling. The fact that you or your parents did not say, enough is enough, stop the bullshit. Even if you have autism. Hey, I know I didn't take you to a Planned Parenthood in Los Angeles like you said. Why did you say that? I didn't take you to one in Orange County or Mission Viejo. Like, nobody is calling her out. Whether you have some kind of mental health struggle or a development disorder, there's still people to hold you accountable. You don't get to just do whatever you want because you have a disorder. That's not how any of this works. She says, I'm coming to terms with what being on the spectrum means, and it's scary for me, but I've faced harder things before, like the last year. I've got this. Great. And I hope if you actually do have this, you find ways to cope. You go to counseling, you go to therapy, which is what we want you to do in anyways. She says, and here's the truth. I'd rather be me with all my struggles, my flaws, and my autism than be any one of you. Well, good. Sounds like you're gaining some confidence. I'd rather carry the weight of this diagnosis of being misunderstood than live with the kind of cruelty you've shown. I don't believe I've shown any cruelty. I believe I've just stated things how they are. I may even be one of the nice ones, which is very weird for me, because I'm not usually known as the nice one. So I leave you with this. I hope you find out why you took pleasure in tearing down a stranger. Nobody's taking pleasure in this. This is a warning that if any other girls or women are thinking about doing this, or know somebody that is thinking about doing this, especially in this social media, teenage, like relationship unhingedness that is going on now, especially with the young generation, I hope they do not think that this is okay. I hope they learn that this behavior is not acceptable and do not try this BS. Cover this because, one, it is an injustice to the men that you've done this to. It is also, you need help. And it's teaching people that if this is you, you need to figure something else out. Because we don't want anybody else doing this stuff. I hope you figure out why I spent hours of analyzing my behavior, making videos, and profiting from my pain. And I hope that when you meet someone who doesn't act the way you expect, you stop and ask yourself, maybe there's more going on here than I know. I think a lot of people do. I think many people have done that. I think that is one of the things that Lauren Knighty does in everyday life. I think when we look at trials or the true crime type stuff, even if we don't condone the behavior, can we figure out why this happened that led them to do this thing? We may not agree with it, but we can understand by their flawed logic or things like that, how they might have thought this was going to solve it, even though it doesn't. And then there's just evil out there. We question things. A lot of us are interested in human behavior and figuring out what causes somebody to do this. That's why a lot of us have asked, do you have abandonment issues? Like, did something go on in your childhood? Like, there is something in you, because a lot of us do ask, what caused her to do this? There's something deep inside you that has made you do these behaviors. And if it's just the fear of being alone and never loved by somebody other than your parents, okay. That's not a good enough reason, but it can explain some of the stuff. But you will become better once you own those things. And you start to figure out and admit the truth to yourself and try and stop trying to write these Medium articles to convince you, because you're not writing it to convince anybody else. She said, because the next person might not survive what you put them through. I almost didn't. You put yourself through this. You went to the public, you made it public. You just don't like the scrutiny that comes with it. You would have liked it had it gone the other way. You wouldn't have cared if Clayton or any of the men felt the way you felt. You would have said good. You would have applauded. You would have cheered. All those things that you say that we do. And this is at the end of it, and I thought it was interesting. So it says, written by Laura Owens, 917 followers. I don't even know why. Writing my way through hell, or through a living hell. A smear campaign waged by strangers who want to break me. Spoiler alert, you won't. What smear campaign is happening? Like, all we've done is go through court documents and body cam footage and police reports and court footage. How is that a smear campaign? We've looked at evidence. That's not a smear campaign. A way to, once again, just make yourself a victim. Do not follow her on Medium. Okay, so now I want to kind of look at the autism spectrum disorder. Like I said, I am not a professional or anything like that. This is just basic so people might have just a general understanding. But it goes from high functioning autism to severe autism. Obviously, high functioning is the lowest range, and then severe is the highest of the highest. And their life is deeply affected by this disorder. So level 1 needs support. Patient's social and communication skills and repetitive behaviors are only noticeable without support. Level 2 needs substantial support. Patient's social and communication skills or repetitive behaviors are still obvious to the casual observer, even with support in place. Level 3 needs very substantial support. Patient's social and communication skills and repetitive behaviors severely impair daily life. And it goes from Asperger's to Canner. And so she is at a level 1 according to her. And what's interesting is her article said, "Oh, I have autism," but then just regurgitated everything that she's put in her other Medium articles. So her stuff were only noticeable when she does not have support. Does that mean when she doesn't have anybody looking over her shoulder and her lawyer goes out of town and that's when she goes off the hinges? If her parents enable this. So, they're not actually support, because support would mean that you help, the person understand, hey, maybe that's not the way to approach it. Or, hey, everything's going to be okay. I'm right here. We can go into this together. And things like that. But she's saying she's a level 1. And she wants everybody to think, why did we not pick up on this ourselves because of all these things that she supposedly has, when it talks about usually it's noticeable when there's no support. Is that going to be something that Gingras says is, oh, I was helping her, so she knew I was supporting her because she needs that, because of her high functioning autism. She just has to have that support and, knowledge that I'm here. I mean, I don't think that's actually what's happening, but it could be a part of their new defense that they're trying to get, whether it's for the prosecution, if she gets prosecuted by the DA's office, or in case of an appeal, which is pretty much not happening. So what is high functioning autism? High functioning autism isn't an official medical diagnosis. So if she was officially medically diagnosed, they wouldn't say, hey, you have high functioning autism. They would have said, you have this and this and this, which is considered a form of high functioning autism, but your disorders are actually this, and they'd give you like the medical terms and stuff for it. She says it's often used to refer to autistic people who read, write, speak, and manage life skills without much assistance. Autism is a neurodevelopment disorder that characterized by difficulties with social interaction and communication. Some autistic people need minimal support, while others require substantial support on a daily basis. This is why the autism is now referred to as the autism spectrum disorder, or ASD. High-functioning autism is often used to refer to those with lower support needs. And then we're going to read on and hear more to learn about it. And I will have the link of where I got this in the description box below. Is high-functioning autism different from Asperger's syndrome? The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, the DSM-5, was updated and released in 2013. Before its most recent update, the DSM used to detail a condition known as Asperger's syndrome, which Asperger's is not really something that people use anymore. They've done away with pretty much that, even though there have been people in the past that have been diagnosed with it. Now it's just we've learned more about it and can put it into other categories, which is a good thing that we have learned more about these type of people because we can help them better when we know more. It says people diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome had several symptoms in common with autistic people, but they didn't have delays in the use of language, cognitive development, the development of age-appropriate self-help skills, the development of adaptive behaviors, and the development of curiosity about their environment. Their symptoms were often milder and less likely to affect their daily lives than symptoms of autistic people. They may even have been perceived as high functioning. So see where it kind of goes together, but there is some differences. But they do consider Asperger's to be on the spectrum of autism. Like I said, I'm not a professional. These are how I am just reading and learning about it, taking my own knowledge in life and things and interpreting them to you. So as stated, however, high-functioning autism has never been an official clinical diagnosis, and Asperger's syndrome was eliminated from the DSM-5 along with some other neurodevelopmental disorders. People who have these types of difficulties with social interaction and communication, or who display repetitive and restrictive behavior, would now simply be diagnosed with ASD, autism spectrum disorder. This is regardless of how much support they may need. How is this determined? So how do we figure out how Laura has come to find out that she has autism? Is she self-diagnosed? Is she Google diagnosed? Did she actually get diagnosed by her neurologist that she sees for her seizures? Did she go see a psychologist? How did she get this diagnosis? This says, how are the levels determined? While it is difficult to determine a person's ASD level, trained psychologists have some tools that can help them accomplish this, such as the Autism Diagnostic Observation Schedule, 2nd edition ADOS 2. The assessment is typically paired with a thorough developmental history. ASD can be diagnosed as early as 18 months old. However, many children and even some adults may not be diagnosed until much later. Being diagnosed at a later age can make support more difficult. If you or your child's pediatrician think they may be autistic, consider making an appointment with an ASD specialist. And then it's got a link for you to click to learn more about testing for ASD. It's part of the reason I will have the link for this article where I got this information, so that if you think that your child especially might have autism, go see about getting them tested. I have just recently thought about having my son go get tested. He's at a functioning level, but there are things with his anxiety and some of his OCD characteristics and his perfectionist, parts of him that I think he could be. And I wouldn't want him, the only reason I would want him to get tested is so that we can start to learn more about him and things that could work for him in thriving as an adult, because he's newly an adult. And so if I can help make him a more successful adult and coming to this realization now and not really having all this knowledge when he was younger, because I would have done it then, but now that I have it, if there are things that can help him and things that he can learn to become even more successful in just being who he is, I think that's great. Some adults just go and get tested just to see if they do it, like, but it doesn't affect them in their everyday lives because they are who they are and they have just learned to live with it. Um, but I think sometimes it can be a nice tool to use because you can learn more about yourself. And in learning more about yourself, I think you can start to become more accepting of yourself and more confident and secure in who you are. And that just because you might have something like this doesn't make you, it doesn't really make you that different. Everybody's unique in their own way. This would just be your way that you are unique and your own person. Like you're still wonderful people. And who's normal anyways, right? Like I don't even know what normal is. So if you have this or you think your kid may have it, go get them tested. If they aren't, okay. If they are, now you have more information and you can do things with it because we're only as good and we can only use the information that we have at the time. We're doing the best with what we have. So if we get to have other things, then we can do the best with that new information. There's lots of support for the autism spectrum disorder. There aren't any standardized recommendations for different levels. Support depends on each person. It's unique symptoms because not everybody, presents themselves the same way with the same symptoms. People with different levels of ASD may all need the same kind of support, but those with level 2 or 3 will likely need more intensive long-term support than those with level 1 ASD. And it talks about there's medication, there's applied behavioral analysis, sensory training, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy. I think just regular counseling and learning coping mechanisms to deal with things that you deal with, whether it is crowds of people, repetitive behaviors. Is there something that you can do to lessen those things? If you've ever watched Monk, I just recently got done watching all of Monk because I had never seen it before. And he is definitely, Monk the character is definitely on the spectrum. But you see the repetitive behaviors and how you can be that type of person and still do great things in life. And then there's ways to, he learns coping mechanisms or, okay, let's maybe, he could learn maybe don't use a wipe every single time, or it's okay if you miss counting a fence post, or if something is not exactly the way it was. There are ways that you can get better at those things and not have it take over your whole life. Sometimes it just does. Those are people with, level 3s and things like that. But there are ways that we can help people and to just do it just so that you feel like you're everybody else. You shouldn't have to just feel like you're not everybody else because you're you. And that's the best thing that you can ever be is yourself. But Monk is very good, and it makes you appreciate a lot of things. If you've watched it, let me know in the comments. Or if you haven't, maybe go give it a try. It's pretty good. So the article says, what's the bottom line? High functioning autism isn't a medical term, and it doesn't have a clear definition. People using this term are likely referring to something similar to level 1 ASD. It may also be comparable to Asperger's syndrome, a condition not currently recognized by the APA. And then, of course, it says if you think your child or yourself, have any symptoms of ASD, see a doctor or a specialist. So people that are referring to something like this, this article says they're referring to something similar to a level 1. So I don't know that she is autistic or has a high functioning autism, because if it's not an actual medical term and it's not the actual diagnosis that somebody is actually given, where did she get this diagnosis? Google? She was like, oh, that person has it. They do things like I do. That means I must have it. Let's put it in a Medium article. I don't know. She could actually have it. I haven't seen any documentation to prove it. All I have is her word, which it's really hard to trust her word. It just looks like an excuse. Because what she could have done in this article is explained how autism affected her in this case. Explained why she did certain things. But instead, she was like, the judge just was charmed by The Bachelor. I was this. I almost unalived myself. I was, JFC cult, like all the stuff. She has no ownership, nothing. And what's interesting and lovely about people usually that are on the autism spectrum is a lot of them are black and white, which is kind of weird because, they're actually known as this big colorful spectrum. It's why I have the colorful background in this video, colorful puzzle pieces and all the different layers and things like that to these people. But it's odd because a lot of the world is kind of black and white. It is and it isn't. Something is right or it's wrong. And I'm not meaning to get political with this, but a good example to me that it was in The Good Doctor. And, he presents as somebody that's kind of on the spectrum. And it kind of shows a little bit of how his brain works and things like that. But one of the things that was interesting was they did an episode about somebody that wanted to have a transition surgery. I don't remember if it was a female that wanted to become a male or a male that wanted to become a female because they weren't born in the right body. They were, for this scenario, let's just say, okay, they were born female, but they felt like they were a male. So, they were doing all these things to change. And then he's like, no, I'm a boy. And The Good Doctor was like, no, you're a girl. And all the other doctors are like, oh my gosh, like, oh my God, be quiet. Like, they're like, oh my God, how can he say that? Like, that's so offensive. Like, oh, he needs to be off the case and everything like that. But to him, it was so black and white. You either have the, X chromosomes or you have the X and Y chromosomes. You are either born with this body part or you're not born with this body part. And that's a black and white to them. And it doesn't get into all the other stuff with the emotional and personalities and things like that. But to the good doctor who is on the scale, it was like, well, these are the facts. And it's kind of, and they're blatant with these things. Like they're not trying to be rude. They're not trying to be offensive. They're just like, no, the science is, this is what it is. It doesn't matter how you're feeling. You are this. You were born with these chromosomes, or you weren't born with those chromosomes. And so, and then it goes through the episode. It actually was kind of funny I laughed because I was just like, that was, to him, you could just see it was just, he was so confused. He couldn't figure out how someone could think that, because in his world, it just was or he wasn't. And everybody around him is so offended that he said this, but he wasn't trying to be offensive. Because sometimes they don't have a lot of empathy and they don't pick up on the social cues, and emotions, and they don't realize they're hurting people's feelings when they're just saying things that are or aren't. They just base things on fact. And it just is simple to them like that. But with support, through the episode, he gets explained all these things and stuff like that. If I can find which episode it is, I'll put that in the description box below as well. But that one helps me realize and you can tell he wasn't trying to be rude. And that's kind of a clear example to me, of somebody with autism. And he is to be like on the higher scale, maybe medium scale. But when I've met people that are autistic, or I even have a niece that has her own issues, who I love to pieces, the world is what it is to them. And they see things in a different way, in a unique way. Doesn't mean it's wrong. But that's the type of things that I think of when I see someone. And when I see Laura Owens, I don't see anything that comes close to that. I hope that story didn't offend anybody. I'm not trying to be political about it. I don't care either way on certain things, because it doesn't affect me. But that wasn't the point of the story. The point of the story was about the doctor and how he saw things. And I just think that it was a good example. So, before we go with our quote of the day, I want to talk about some celebrities that actually are on the autism spectrum. And a lot of these, I think we could see where they might land on the spectrum. And they're in the public eye. And I think looking at people from maybe all different parts of the spectrum, with even these celebrities, can we see any of Owens in any of these people? I know everybody presents differently, but I have a good amount of people on all different ends. So if you didn't know, Dan Aykroyd, he's an actor. He's been in a lot of things. He also is like, he can sing the blues. Um, he's kind of an oddball. Um, I could see it. I could see him maybe being more on the high functioning part, um, not fully taking over daily life, or maybe it did at one point, but he's gotten um, therapies and learned coping things to maybe make it take over his life less. Um, Elon Musk. I don't think any of us be would be surprised to learn that Elon Musk was on the scale. Sia. She is the singer that usually has the wig that is like two different colors, like blonde and black or black and white. Um, she pretty much always has her face hidden. She did music videos with Maddie from Dance Moms. Um, there's some other things out there about Sia, but her. Anthony Hopkins. He is an actor. He is an older gentleman now, but he is on the spectrum. Albert Einstein, that one's. Then we have Professor Temple Grandin. There is a whole movie done on Temple and her life. And Claire Danes plays her. But she is on the spectrum. Courtney Love, who is a big train wreck. A lot of the time, she was married to Kurt Cobain. And then Susan Boyle. Now, Susan Boyle was on Britain's Got Talent. And she has such a beautiful voice. A lot of people, when they looked at her, were like, what is this woman gonna do? Like they just looked at her like, well, you're not, like, you don't have the look of a famous person or a famous singer. Like, how are you ever gonna be anybody? And then she gets up there and opens her mouth and sings, and it's just beautiful. And no, she doesn't have the mannerisms or the looks of a, A-list celebrity. But she has shown the world that even if you're different and you don't look the part or you don't act the part, you can still follow your dreams and achieve them. I mean, that's kind of what her song is about, Dream, that she sings. And so those are a couple of celebrities that are on different parts of the scale. And so if you think about all these different celebrities, and if you're not familiar with them, maybe go look at them or look at movies or songs that they've done. Go watch the Temple movie. Look at them and how their behavior is and how they act and how they present themselves. And then look at Owens. Are there similarities? But I want you to like this video, subscribe, turn those notification bells on, share this if you would like. But our quote of the day is, people with autism do not lie, do not judge, do not play mind games. Maybe we can learn something from him. And that is why I thought the Good Doctor thing was such a good example, because they're not there to judge. They weren't playing games. They don't lie, because a lot of them don't necessarily have the empathy to do it, or they're just so blunt in the way they see things that, and they don't pick up on the social cues, so they just are who they are unapologetically. And that was what I think even the Tilted Lawyer was probably hoping to get out of this article that she wrote. Was she going to be unapologetically truthful? Was she going to quit with the mind games? Was she going to quit with the lying and just live in truth and explain these things that went with her diagnosis, and explain, these are the things that I did. I didn't know I had this. I knew I was different, and I felt judged, and I felt all these things. And she can say she doesn't have support, but her mother is up her rear end. So, she's just, a lot of what she wrote is BS. But whether you have autism or not, be you unapologetically. And if you know somebody or with autism, make sure they know they're loved. You know, that you're there to support them. Just be a helping hand. But does this add a piece to the puzzle in explaining Owens, or is it just another scam? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you later.